about 7 weeks in at this point. And oh, by the way, shout
Oh,
out to the fucking homie. He'll probably be like stepping on my keyboard and being like, "Oh, fucking shit up." But can I just say this? We are so back. We're so back. We are so back. Last week we were in the gutter, bro. We were in shambles. We thought, fuck, we might have another 150 years. Fuck, we thought we might have $4 gas for the next 20 years. We thought, fuck, you know, we might have a somewhat stable environment, for the foreseeable future. I just gotta say, bro, we are so back to apocalyptic, cataclysmic doom. We're so back, and I'm very excited. I'm very excited for it, I have to say. Um, I have two things I want to touch on. First thing I want to touch on, obviously, number one, we were right. I think the stream cut off, but we predicted the ceasefire is going to go nowhere. It went nowhere. It crashed and burned incredibly fast. Within a day, within 21 hours, less than a day. Who'd have thunk? JD Vance did make it down. Thankfully, it was relayed to, by some Iranian sources that they did at least have some sort of back and forth that was seemingly reasonable for a number of hours. And allegedly, supposedly, that stopped happening when JD Vance started to call a number of outside negotiators, namely Donald Trump, ultimately Baby Netanyahu, who, and let me get your take on this. Bibi Netanyahu recently, after these talks exploded within a day, put out a statement because the press was asking him, okay, there's rumors that JD Vance called you, yada yada yada. What happened? Is that true? And he's like, oh, yes, that's very true. And we, as you know, the team they call me every day. Um, okay. Number one, this guy's got to stop admitting stuff. I don't know how he keeps getting away with this. He keeps getting away with this. Remember when he made the statement? What was it? Something akin to, um, Genghis Khan. Jesus Christ, has nothing on Genghis Khan because at the end of the day, um, good will always be overcome by like evil, violent terror. Like,
what?
and he's like talking about Hamas. He's like, yeah, but they're Genghis. It's like, dude, you're not fooling anybody. You're literally just admitting that you want to kill everything that's good with violent terror, right? He just says these things, and he just said this shit. Yeah, as they do, he literally admitted that everyone in the Trump administration has daily briefings with him. Who the
Oh
fuck
my
is this dude? He's some fucking stupid little fucking Ukrainian Polish freak that lives in the Middle East for whatever reason, and he has the gall to have the fucking United States administration brief him every day like he has. Get the fuck out of here, bro. Like, what the fuck? This is insanity to me. The fact that he even has the gall to admit these things and that no one in the US mainstream media will bat an eye at that. They won't. It's crazy to me, but obviously it was bound to happen. God bless. Um Allergic to Netanyahu. Um but yeah, that was crazy. And the thing that I've been following recently, because it seemed like, for a minute there, Trump really did start World War III in order to stop us having to talk about Jeffrey Epstein and the fact that he's a child rapist. Trump himself is, and he's heavily implicated in that. And there was sort of a moment where it was like, Oh no, I mean he knew him, but there was a public falling out between Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump, and maybe he hates them and he has a vendetta against them, and that's why he's saying all these things about Jeffrey Epstein, all the to drain the swamp, and that he's gonna come back after them. And um, the more and more we start to uncover things, the more and more we realize, no, he basically just is another Jeffrey Epstein, just is one of these guys that just is a sexual deviant and like drinks children blood. And there's FBI witness statements of him, doing horrible rapes, basically. And yeah, doing financial crimes, the likes of which Jeffrey Epstein is deeply intertwined with and also competitive with. There's part of like they hate each other a little bit because they're like, oh no, I'm the like billionaire pedophile. No, I'm the best billionaire pedophile. So this is insane. But recently, did you see this? Melania Trump, the first lady, over in the East Wing, made a very curious statement right after I believe the talks fell through. And she made a statement that was like, number one, I've never really met Jeffrey Epstein, even though it was public knowledge that they've dated. And what?
She gave like a whole speech about that shit.
It was a press conference. Yeah, she gave a whole
Yeah.
press conference. Um, and that she was distancing herself from Ghislaine Maxwell, even though in the latest DOJ email drop, there are very chummy emails between them where she's literally asking Ghislaine Maxwell, "Where are you going to be this weekend? I missed you this time, blah, blah, blah." So, um, first I thought she was getting out ahead of it, maybe, some sort of allegation. Then she goes on to say in the press conference that um, something much more radical than even a lot of people who are in the government who are, sort of allegedly pro Epstein, exposure are saying is that she called for the witnesses and the victims to testify in front of Congress, right, in a special public hearing, and to have their testimonies be written in the record, which is pretty big considering that her husband's whole administration is mired in Epstein intrigue, and they've been trying to downplay it and get it out of the news cycle to the point with which they may have started World War III. So why is this happening? What's going on? Which brings me back to a few theories, which I want to get your take on. Number one is she's just getting out ahead of something that's going to be dropping, and she's preempting that, and she feels she has to say something about the victims in order to make it feel sincere, but she really just doesn't care. Number two um, is Melania Trump Donald Trump's honeypot? Is this what's happening here? Is she the Erica Kirk to Donald Trump? Is that what's happening here? Is she the sleeper cell? Did Netanyahu say, you got to go in there? Because the East Wing, they said, oh, the West Wing didn't know anything about this. All the people in the administration didn't know anything about this. So, very curious timing there. And did Netanyahu pick up the phone and say, if he's going to make a deal, if Donald Trump's going to send JD Vance there to make a deal, you got to start putting the pressure on. You got to get the blackmail out in the public. Is that happening? I don't know. I don't know, but it's a possibility at this point because it's insanely confusing. Um, the first possibility, I think, also. Let me just drop some Epstein lore. I know I'm going on, but let me just finish this because I've been following the Epstein thing for a while. This is another very weird. There's just a million threads to this ball of yarn, and this is another very weird thread. This dude Paolo Zampoli, I believe is his name, who was named. He was like ambassador to the UN ambassador to like Grenada or some shit, some fake post that he bought off from a Caribbean nation to get, basically. Very close to Donald Trump. Um, Started a modeling agency which funneled some models through Jean-Luc Brunel, which is the French connection. That's like the French Jeffrey Epstein, this guy that worked with Jeffrey Epstein, who did a lot of the French and European modeling scouting. He allegedly scouted this girl, Amanda Ungaro, I believe her name is, from Brazil, along with Melania Trump. This was before they knew Donald Trump. So they were scouted through an associate of Jeffrey Epstein. So they were both brought to New York, and it seems like this sort of pimping out that happens in this Epstein syndicate, and this has been speculated widely with Melania Trump. It seems like that is what sort of happened to Melania Trump, except she got a sort of golden goose. Where I mean, it's not. I don't envy her life, but she didn't get the like sex dungeon, harvest your adrenochrome and then like, you know, put you in a pile of bodies. She got the like, all right, you're the wife of, this powerful dude. So she kind of got the luck of the draw. And this lady, Amanda Ungaro, who was brought here by this guy, Paulo Zampoli, a Trump associate, and who most likely introduced Melania Trump to Jeffrey Epstein, who then had a fling, who most likely passed it off to Trump, which is another point of contention. You know, is it so simple that Donald Trump didn't really like Jeffrey Epstein because he fucked his bitch? Like, is that it? That might just be it. You know what I mean? Anyway, this lady Amanda Ungaro, she got deported by ICE because Paolo called the Trump administration and said, "Get this bitch out of here." They had a son together, and she is now threatening on Twitter to expose. She's saying very salacious things. Melania Trump, you were there my whole life, 26 years. You know all this, that, the third. You're not going to pull me into being some evil, blah, blah, blah. I'm about to expose it all. She did a piece with El País, which was supposed to be the bombshell thing, but allegedly the reporter, someone got to him. They took out half of the article. A lot of palace intrigue going on. A lot of palace intrigue going on. Um, what do we make of that? What do we make of Melania Trump? What do we make of the Epstein connection, especially considering like before this war, the Iran war, and I know Trump said, I did this war, I just felt he did it on a whim, you know? Like, do we think like that because people were getting arrested. Let's not forget about this. People were getting arrested in the United Kingdom, in Norway, I believe. All these princes, these royalty, they were getting implicated in it. It was reaching a new fever pitch for the Epstein stuff, and it would not go away. And I'm wondering, like, is it really such that Donald Trump may have gone into this war because it's either that or his whole pedophile ring goes down. Is that another dimension to him getting backed into the corner here? That because we don't talk about the Epstein stuff a lot anymore. You know, before the Iran war. I don't know. What are your thoughts on this? This is
I mean, that's definitely an interesting idea. That there's kind of a threat um, by some of the
someone.
Epstein elite to kind of remind Trump that he's pretty heavily implicated in this stuff, and that he's if they're going down, he's going down. Um, I I think it could also be just for she could be trying to distance herself from Trump himself, to try and sort of say, look, I'm not. We just ended up in this marriage. I'm not all this
I don't
shit.
know.
Like, yeah, he's the weirdo. I mean, it could. she might actually be really looking at where the which way the wind is blowing. It's like I don't, the there's a good chance that I think Trump will be impeached and
Yeah.
convicted in the after the Democrats have a landslide victory in these midterm elections. Um, and I think she might just be trying to. It's possible she's just trying to position herself as distantly as possible as sort of a neutral first lady that's apolitical and not part of the crimes that Trump has committed. Um, I think, yeah, I think it is pretty difficult to deny too that the Epstein thing, the Epstein documents were is a pretty convenient timing to start a war. The wag the dog moment. Um, and yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say that that's an unreasonable theory. I think that we might see something like that come out later on. That this was kind of a threat. I mean, it's really weird. It is really weird that people were already for sort of not really as focused on this anymore, and then all of a sudden she brings it up like it's just like you're being interviewed by the police and they pull you over for speeding and you say, "I do not have drugs in this car, officer." Like it's sort of a weird thing. This kind of it kind of came out of nowhere and seems like maybe there were people asking about it, but like now the whole nation is focused on for a whole media cycle. Like, wait, we weren't even thinking about this, and now what's going on here? Um, so there is it seems very it seems very peculiar. Maybe she's also with Trump. I think people around Trump, we do have to assume maybe they're crazy or stupid, and that this was just I am fucking guilty of this shit. I just I'm like afraid of what I've done, and I'm
Right.
just make this move and like try and cover it up before some shit comes out,
Right.
which I don't want anybody else to find out about. It's possible she fucking raped some kids or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, they're yeah, I think these people who think like Melinda Gates, I think my mom used to say that one time, oh, it's so good that, they're divorced because, Bill, she's like starting to call, wheels turning, like Bill Gates actually is pretty bad, but like Melinda Gates, she just does all this charity. It's like, no, bro, I'm sorry. Same, and there's a lot of discussion about this with people like Adriana Ross. Ghislaine Maxwell tried to make this whole thing. Basically, I'm a woman, so I must be a victim in this. No, you're a child sex trafficker. You've seen it happen, and you work for a child sex trafficker, and you're not underage. You're not groomed. You're you're a person of age. Melania is like what, in her 50s? I'm
Yeah,
sorry, you're implicated. You're implicated, and yeah, you're probably in there too. You're probably doing whatever freak shit too. Like I don't trust you.
there. I mean, it is. I think it's important to also kind of recognize too, like there's been studies about this. Like 80% of people who are at that level, who are like CEOs, politicians, they are sociopaths. There's psychological documentation or psychological studies that have documented this. Like you should assume that anybody who is at that level is on some level uh, they have some sort of personality disorder. They are a maladjusted human being that that wouldn't think twice about committing a heinous crime
Yeah,
that any normal human being would
shudder
would
at. Yeah.
if they did commit it, they would feel absolute disgust from the thing that they have done. But they wouldn't do something like that without a reason. But these people don't even kill somebody or rape somebody, rape a child. Like it doesn't. the only thing they're afraid of. They're not afraid of the actual remorse of that. They're just afraid of the consequences of somebody else finding out. Um, so I think, yeah, there is some degree of that where, you know, she's definitely capable of these crimes. It's hard to kind of put your finger on anything that's going on in Trump's administration right now. I mean, everything is so chaotic, unplanned, uncoordinated. Um, it's like sort of madly lashing out in every direction, and this upheaval going on throughout the whole administration, where you have all these generals being fired and replaced, presumably for not following orders. Then you have all of a sudden you have the ceasefire right before threats of nuclear war, and then the ceasefire that they demanded falls apart. Their whole off ramps seems to be pretty. It's not completely off the table because the Iranians are reasonable, but it's a much more precarious situation than it was before, and you know it's really difficult to tell what the hell is going on in this whole administration is a complete disaster. There is, I mean, you and I always talked about like the Biden administration. When he was the president, it was obvious he was not running his own administration, and there was a lack of cohesiveness to the Biden administration. Like Anthony Blinken was kind of doing his own thing, seemed to be pretty prominent, but then there's all these other figures within the Biden administration that were just kind of maneuvering and trying to take control of the ship, and it was very disorganized, chaotic administration. But this takes it almost to a whole different level where we don't know what the fuck is like. Does anybody have control? Trump
Penetrable.
seems to be a little bit stronger of a president than Biden, who obviously had a different kind of dementia. Trump probably seems to have some sort of dementia, but his dementia is just so schizophrenic and all over the place and back and forth, and can't even stick to a single policy in this war for a day. Where it's like, well, I mean, we should, maybe I don't know when we'll pivot to this, but like this blockade that's going on, which is, I mean, it just makes no sense. Like it makes no fucking sense. It literally, first of all,
logical.
It's impossible for them to even blockade that large of an area because they'd have to bring ships in close to Iran to blockade the strait, right? But if the ships are close to Iran can sink those ships or blow them or render them inoperable, essentially, with missile and drone and mine attacks and a torpedo and drone torpedo, whatever, all these technologies that they developed with their navy, they're super vulnerable to attack. So they have to increase this radius away from the blockade. So it essentially becomes like the whole Arabian Sea that they've got to blockade, which would require like way more shit. Like it would would require the entire U.S. Navy. Does it have to be present? All like
more than that, I think the military analysts are saying they need a huge armada to do that. They'd need like all of NATO and probably half of the UN countries. Like,
and they have to identify certain ships, right? So they're not just indiscriminately blowing up ships because what if they fucking hit an American ship or something, so they have to, that's part of the process, and then they have to come into range, and it's not really a feasible operation in itself. But other than that, even if it was successful, on so many different levels, it's one, I mean, just at face value, the whole goal right now is to lift the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, and now you're closing the Strait of Hormuz for Iranian ships, but now the flow of oil is decreasing around the globe even further, which is going to increase your economic crisis even more dramatically. So you're just, it's as if,
He's accelerating it.
I mean, if you were in a city that was, or a castle that was like being laid, it was under siege, there's an attacking army on this castle, and they're like, we're nobody's allowed through. Oh yeah, well we're not letting anybody out anyways. It's like, well, that doesn't make any fucking sense. Like, why? What, we're gonna starve ourselves even
Yeah.
faster. We're gonna throw our own food in the ocean. Like, what kind of fucking, I mean, the whole world can see this. It's just like somebody's throwing a tantrum.
Yeah.
There's completely convoluted. You know, I heard Richard Wolff talk about this too. It's like, well, so they began this war with this bombing campaign, killing thousands of people, you know, including Americans. If you're waging a war, you would start with the fucking blockade. Like, why would you wouldn't start with the bombing campaign. You'd start with the blockade, and then you'd work your way up to the bombing campaign. This doesn't even seem like offensive anymore. It's like you just bomb their cities. Like, we don't give a fuck if you're just gonna like have some ships far away from our fucking country and potentially sink some of them. Like, this is like,
It's totally a it's reactionary. And you know what it is? It's third grade stuff. It's saying, oh, you're blockading the Strait of Hormuz? Oh no, well, I'm blockading your blockade. That's what I'm gonna do. It's
like, dude, like 5-year-olds could come up with better strategy than this. I mean, it is literally like somebody putting their fucking underwear on over their pants. Like, you're like, dude, what the fuck are you? Oh, dude, it's fine. Like, it's clothes. Like, they go on as long as they're on. It's fine. It's like, no, dude, you look like a fucking retard. Like, and it's in front of the whole world. Like, the whole world can see this. Trump is really, I mean, he's fucked. He is absolutely fucked. And he's making the situation worse for himself, too,
yeah.
by the way. And the more he acts out, you know, this is as somebody who has experienced like narcissists in real life, like people with probably malignant narcissism, like a similar narcissism that Trump has. You know, what you see when they start to realize that everybody else realizes who they are, that's when they start to freak out, and that's when the paranoia starts to come in. You know, these people are all paranoid. That's when the insanity starts to really double down, and they start to react even more and try even harder. But like their craziness, their desire to sort of shake things up and cause chaos and try to command control of a situation and other people, it starts to accelerate, and then that process also, everybody else is also waking up to the fact that they're impotent. You know, they're powerless in the situations. All this stuff they've been doing before, which, you know, maybe at a certain point when you had respect for this person, you might have thought, oh man, they can actually do something here. But now that you've kind of seen their tricks, you realize that all they're doing is trying to manipulate you. They don't actually have any power in the situation. They're lying. Um, you know, you watch them fall apart. You know, you watch them start to lash out and get even crazier. But it doesn't work anymore. And I think this is kind of what you're witnessing with Trump. I mean, he's like having meltdown after meltdown. You know, posting a picture of himself as Jesus Christ or some sort of Messiah. Like, the man is like mentally ill beyond what
He's unraveling. I mean,
it's. I mean, and he is. I think he might be starting to realize how fucked he is. Like, this war is going to be. He'll try and pin it on like Pete Hegseth or something like that, because Pete was the only one in the room who was really like, "This was a great idea, Mr. President." You know, like everybody else had, you know, they may have been more sycophantic, but like, and not, but they knew at some level they're like, "This is a bad idea. We're not going to win this." Um, but it's all coming back to him, you know. we're gonna have a really weak economy. The whole thing might implode in the next few months. And certainly within the year, we're gonna see um, dramatic stagflation, where we have high inflation and a plummeting job create, job losses, job hemorrhaging. People are going to be taking like working to willing to work for less money while prices are skyrocketing, and it's going to be horrible. And it's all coming back to him. How many American soldiers died in this war to date? Like what they said, like 12. It's got to be hundreds. And at least it's probably in the thousands at this point.
13 of the Middle Eastern bases, which they're large, all their Middle Eastern bases are rendered unoperational. I mean, you don't just lose 12 people when that happens. It's physically not possible.
I mean, they've hit the Gerald Ford, to the point where it's got a dock for. I mean, the U.S. Navy is like, well, no, we didn't get hit, and we just magically had this fire on our aircraft carrier that should be designed for war, but randomly the laundry room is what took it out. Oh, okay. That sounds likely. Yeah, no, I'm sure this massive fire didn't injure or kill anyone either. Or the Abraham Lincoln also had to withdraw because of, I think that one was pretty obvious that it had been hit a number of times and it had to just withdraw. You know, Probably a lot of people died on that assault too. I find it unlikely. There's 5,000 people packed onto that boat. Like if there's even one explosion with shrapnel, somebody's getting injured. Um, you know, all this is coming back to Trump in a political way. With the Epstein files mounting to, it's going to be a disaster for him. That there's no escape from this. And it was all him. It was his decision. Um, he's the best thing that he could possibly do right now would be to lift whatever the fuck this blockade is, give in to Iran's terms, you know, get the Strait of Hormuz opened as quickly as he can, giving the Iranians whatever they could do, they'll want to do it, withdraw from the region, whatever, and declare some sort of victory, to try to declare some sort of victory, but it's gonna look like a defeat no matter what, because it is a defeat. You can't polish for some of these people who still support Trump, which is mind-boggling to think that anybody could be paying attention to this shit and have any sort of like cohesive appreciation for somebody who is this much of a fucking idiot, this incompetent, this dangerous, just toxic, terrible policymaker, somebody who should not be in this position at all. It's obvious he's in way over his head. But he's not. I mean, either way, he's fucked.
Yeah, I was talking about this with my coworker Ken today. He's maneuvered himself into a corner at this point because here's how things work diplomatically when you're a great power that has to, or you don't have to, but in your mind, you have to be able to project power. You can't admit a military defeat that they're going through right now because for them, that means every other theater is now open game because it means if a mid-level power like Iran can rebuff America, what about Japan? Well, Japan's they got bases, American bases in their country. What happens if they decide we don't want that? What happens if they realign with China, Because they have to economically. What happens? Now Iran has showed this lane to them. So diplomatically, this is what happened during the Cuban Missile Crisis, right? In order for that to be resolved because of the hubris of America, they had to act domestically like it was a win for America, right? They had to say, "Hey, we got the nukes out of Cuba. We strong-armed the Soviets. We did this, that, the third, and we totally diffused the situation, and we came out on top in our backyard, in our neighborhood." When in reality, you have these backdoor chats about, okay, we'll take the Jupiter missiles out of Turkey, and the offensive missiles that we put on your doorstep if you take these out. And we'll sell it to our public by not admitting that we took our missiles, away from offensive missiles out of your region. And you'll do the opposite. The Soviets will say, they took the missiles out of Turkey, whatever. They can't do that. That can't happen right now because there is nothing that there's nothing that the Trump administration is willing to give up because they're insane and sycophantic, and there's nothing that Iran is willing to give up because they know that they can win, and there is no one on the American side who can who can make that sort of diplomatic concession because they know that that's what they need to do. So there's just no chance of that clear diplomatic off ramp where you just have, okay, we both have something that we get out of it, and we can both sell that politically to our domestic audiences, and we can both de-escalate these things, and we both have clear, bilateral talks with people who are adults. That's just it's just not in the cards. John F. Kennedy is nothing like Donald Trump. They're just so far away from each other. And it's sad because the Iranians are very sophisticated. They allegedly came there with a team of about 70 people, documents on documents on documents on documents. Ghalibaf is a very smart person. He's not just a politician, he's a professor. These people study military economics. They're philosophical. Okay, so they're so prepared, and all your hope was some JD Vance guy, and that's all our hope is. Some guy who has just said in the past some things that sound good. That's all our hope is some guy who has said coherent things about foreign policy, and so maybe since he's consciously said them, he maybe has some idea about that in some sort of depth. And Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff, who are both like Israeli operatives, who
Were they on the negotiating team?
they were there. Yeah, so JD Vance was there along with them. So yeah, this is the thing too. He's got his handlers there. They can't just send a guy. Kali Buff, they sent him, and he's like, they said, I talked to Saeed Mushtaba Khamenei, and he gave me a mandate to make a deal. It's not like the Iranians are calling up Pezeshkian and Khamenei and saying, "Is this good? Is this good?" No, they're there. They have a mandate. They're going to make a deal. JD Vance, not only is he there calling up people, also, where's Marco Rubio? Jesus Christ. They're at a fucking UFC. Yeah, they're at a
Yeah.
UFC match. They're playing golf. This is just the unseriousness of these people, And then, not only that, you send the two handlers there who have been doing these, like fake negotiations for who God knows how many countries, which end up killing people, basically, having leaders decapitated. And it's like, allegedly, Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff, this is how unserious they are, too. JD Vance is at least trying to initially do that back and forth. All right, here's our maximalist demands. What are your maximalist demands? All right, can we chip away at some corners of the edges of both of those maximalist demands to try and at least go from here to here, here to here, at least. And then you have Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff in there, and they're apparently, according to the Iranian delegation, what they're worried about is they want a cut of the toll They don't care about nuclear warfare. They don't care about the American economy. They personally they want a cut of the toll to the Trump administration and their people. Okay, this is a new level of America. Like we always say, America is just a real estate scam. Like this is a new level of just America. Everything goes down, drains down to just it's a real estate scam. Like somebody owns real estate, they're just getting some rent from there.
Well,
It's insane. It's
or
insane.
the con artists as the top negotiators who are working for the real estate con artist president.
Right. This mobster, weird, like Jewish, Russian, like Eastern Ukrainian, mobbed up, like real estate casino moguls. Like these people, I mean, they're so crude, and it's just they cannot get through their head, I think, the seriousness of the situation, or they're so degenerative that they just don't give a fuck. That then maybe that's just it too, Maybe they just don't care, and they think, I don't know, we'll go to Zambia and have a compound if it blows up.
Yeah, they're sociopaths. They have an antisocial personality disorder. They don't
Yeah,
fucking care.
yeah,
They're just trying to figure out what they get out of it. They
yeah,
don't. How can they advance themselves from these positions? I think Witkoff. The thing about him was, for a minute, it seemed like he had some sort of integrity,
yeah,
or at least integrity, but he had some reasonable policy proposals, at least with the Russian thing. And in the beginning of Trump's administration, and the whole, you know, he would he was following through. It seemed like on a lot of these campaign expectations and promises, where they were, the whole Trump administration was elected because they weren't because Biden had fucked up Ukraine so bad. I think um, some people knowingly, and a lot of people had kind of not really knowingly, but a lot of the reason I think that Trump was elected was because of the Ukraine war that Biden had begun. Not the other way. No, it was fucking what the mainstream narrative said, but this was another American war. This is Biden's project to destroy America in the end stages of American imperialism. And Trump was saying, well, why are we doing this? This is a stupid idea. Why are we fucking having this war between Ukraine and Russia? I'm gonna end this war. Um, and for a brief moment, and he said, "No new wars." Also, we'll let's stop having any of these fucking wars. These wars are pointless. They're expensive. They're bloody. They're terrible. Let's stop doing this. And people were like, "Yeah," and we don't want to pay for this shit. The cost of living skyrocketed under Biden because of the Ukraine war, and the cutting off of oil from Russia, which was the main factor. We're about to experience that again, but in an accelerated way because we've already been cut off from Russia. So it's going to go up even faster than before. But what happened when they began to pivot away from these policies that were the whole reason that they were elected? It's and to credit to them, in a way that they actually did begin to seem to follow through with some of their campaign promises for a minute. It's not something that I think you and I are at all used to in American politics. Is a politician actually getting elected and trying to do what they said they were going to do. So for a minute, it was almost as if they were headed in that direction. But they did a complete 180, And not only did they not end the Ukraine war or try to negotiate or find a way out for America, they effectively recommitted themselves to it and then started a new war. Like this is, Steve Witkoff was at the forefront of trying to end the Ukraine war, and it looked like for a moment there was some promise that they they're going to negotiate and come up with some sort of plan. But now this guy is completely gone the other direction, along with Trump and the whole administration. And you got Kushner in there, who, I mean, what an absolute. I mean, the fact that he's even involved in the administration in any way is an absolute joke. Like the president's son-in-law has this high position as like some important dignitary, and like he just gets sent into all these like tense international situations, and all he's trying to do is scam them so he can get a cut of this $2 million fee per ship. Like, this is a fucking.
Well, the
I
Kushner
mean,
is heavily implicated in this too, and they're just another one of these families like the Blinkens and the Epsteins, like that they all intermingle and they all become this, yeah, a syndicate of people.
right.
And it's weird for me because I think something that's happening now is that and this is what happens every administration, like you saw this George Bush, whatever, every administration, this sort of seeps into the mainstream media consciousness. They sort of parrot it a little bit, but like recently the level of delusion that I've been seeing, not just from the administration, but from the mainstream media, is it's it's to a point where it's it's like, how can I even logically try and explain how these people think about the situation, that they're either just crazy or they're so misinformed that they live essentially in a different world, basically. Let me just read to you one quotation, just one paragraph, very quickly, um, from a Washington Post opinion piece. Um, this was by a guy named Mark A. Thiessen. It's called "Iran Thinks It Has Leverage. Here's How Trump Can Prove It Wrong." Here's just one quote. "Quote unquote, carry out a final barrage of leadership strikes, eliminating the Iranian officials who have been spared for the purpose of negotiations. Iran's leaders must be made to understand that their lives literally depend on reaching a negotiated settlement to Trump's liking. If they refuse to do so, they will be killed." Okay, so we have journalists out here that are writing articles like Trump is tweeting, like some Israeli Mossad agent. Like, this is a new level of delusion. First of all, to think, remember when Zelensky came to the White House, and yeah, it was kind of starting to look like, all right, they're going to start ramping up the pressure on Zelensky to end this Ukraine war. They were like, you don't have the cards. That's where Trump is right now. You don't have the cards, people. You're gonna say, let's just assassinate more leaders. Let's just kill them. You don't have the cards, my guy. I don't think you got the capabilities to do that, my brother, because you're gonna kill them, the only people who are talking to you. You're gonna kill Abbas Arakshi. You're gonna kill people like Pezeshkian, who were literally softliners and now have become like so hardline that, like, Khomeini, Ayatollah Khomeini, the previous one would have been like, no, you need to reel it in. Like, it's not gonna do anything. This is your only chance. This is your only hope, is to go to these people and say, "Hey, I'm so sorry that we just did all that. Can we just give you everything you want and just like never talk about this again and just kind of like go back to like what we kind of had a little bit before?" That's your only chance. That's your only chance. And these people are sycophantic incitement to genocidal war criminals to say, Let's just let's just fucking kill them right now while they're there, because what, they're not. Okay, this is not how a negotiation works. You don't go into a negotiation and say, "Well, here's my maximalist demands," and then the other person goes, "All right, well, what about this offer?" And they're like, "Well, they're declining my maximalist demands. It looks like we'll have to shoot you in the face." That's not how a negotiation works. A negotiation works. 1,500, 900. All right, 1100. You start high, they start low, you meet in the middle. Oh my God, it's art of the deal stuff, folks. It's not that hard. And they can't get it through their brain because they're so, I don't know what, they're insane. They think that we have a military that can do these things. They're just getting paid to say these things. It boggles my mind. I mean, what really is the reason for these recent events? Because a part of me keeps going back and forth between, this is always the question with Trump. Is there some sort of actual strategy that him and or somebody behind the scenes puppeteering him is pulling? Because it has been speculated that like the blockade, what this blockade really is that they want to be able to pick off oil going to China, basically. They want to do international piracy coming out of the Strait of Hormuz, away from Iran, so far away that they're not actually blockading Iran. They're picking off things that are going to go through the Strait of Malacca, basically, to China. And,
I
you
think
know,
that is another a point too. Sorry to interrupt you,
yeah,
but I think that is a point too where a lot of people are getting this blockade wrong. Where people are looking at it like this is a de-escalatory step. But I think this is actually an expansion of the war,
oh, yeah.
and it is an aggressive where they're trying to bring China into the war. They're trying to include China into the war of the theater of operations through aggressively, essentially trying to embargo China.
Yeah.
So China is now who has been all along. That is their boogeyman.
That's the
That is
number.
their arch enemy.
Yeah.
China because China is in the most successful country in the world, and maybe even the most successful country in human history,
Mhm.
and has overtaken them economically in every aspect, and they're afraid that China will replace or disrupt their world dominance. And I think that just looking at the situation. There is, to some degree, I think, is maybe there is some sort of concept of like general strategy, but there is no fucking strategy to this. I mean, if they had any strategy, they wouldn't have started it because it's a guaranteed loss. Everybody who knew anything
Let me
about it.
interject now, real quick. There's been speculation that the point of this is, okay, why are they blowing up GCC? Why are they blowing up Russian oil? America is an oil producing country. There's been speculation that what Trump wants to do is that he wants to do to China what we did to Europe, destroy their connection to cheap energy from Russia and make it so that they have to buy expensive LNG and fracked oil and gas from us at really high prices. Is it possible that Trump is saying, fuck it, let the Middle East burn, let escalate it, fuck it, go crazier, so that China can't get this oil, and he's been timing this with his meeting, which he's getting postponed because he's going to go there in I think May, he or um yeah, I think late May now. It's postponed that he's going to go to China, and they've been trying to position themselves to some place where they can go, "Ha, I got you, she. You have to capitulate. You have to do X, Y, Z because now I got your
Yeah,
oil. You have to buy
they,
oil from us. You have to
they,
depend on us." Is that what's happening, maybe, or something like that?
I think if they are doing something like that, their demands are going to be to try and leverage Iran into ending this conflict and opening the Strait of Hormuz.
Mm.
But yeah, I think that is possible. Yeah, that could be some of the thought process. I'm sort of doubtful. I mean, I think this is just sort of a fucking. This is like a a shot in the dark. Maybe that was some sort of there was some sort of potential maneuver, like tactical maneuvering in that thought process, but it's not going to work. The Chinese aren't going to be intimidated by this. The oil demand in China for energy is a lot lower. They have they make 40% of their energy is renewable, like
Right.
that, or coal is another like 40%. So it's only like 7% that's oil. They do buy a lot of Iranian oil, but they're not going to capitulate this
Yeah.
to this. They'll accept the higher prices, and they don't necessarily want this war to go on, but they're not going to let the United States. They're not going to let Trump let. They're not going to strengthen Trump's position in this bizarre, idiotic tactical maneuver that it's just going to fail. I mean, this is just flailing around at this point, and you could I think you could try to make an argument that they are thinking a little bit ahead, and that is I do actually like that as a thought process for them, that they're Trump is thinking about this, using this meeting to try and strengthen his hand and use China to put pressure on Iran. But um, if this is part of some sort of grand scheme, the whole war in general, like, is it part of a plan to collapse the entire U.S. economy so they could turn us all into slaves? Like, that's the only, like, I mean, like this weird techno feudal state that they've been trying to create. That's them. I mean, that's the only thing I can think of as part of a grand strategy. But I think Trump is going to be sacrificed in that whole plan. Like, he's going to be thrown to. He's going to be made as made out as the Pied Piper for this. I mean, but somewhat rightly so. I mean, he didn't come up with this Iran war in general. This has been watch that Wesley Clark video from 20 years ago where he's like lays it out. Everything they've done in the Middle East. That was 20. The video was 20 years ago. He's like, well, we're going to start with Iraq. The Pentagon has a plan, and then they're going to move on to like Lebanon, Syria, Libya, Yemen, and finish with Iran.
Yeah.
And I don't know if there's another one in there, but you
Afghanistan.
know, Afghanistan, right? And then you know, here we are is the culmination of that plan. So
They've gone to everything now. What's left is Iran. So,
right, I think ideally though they would want to win this war. They do want to overthrow the Iranian government. And they do want their oil, and they do want control of that region. They're power hungry people. They don't want to just relinquish control of vast parts of the world. So part of a grand
if
strategy.
you're in a death cult, if you're a eugenicist, insane billionaire, and and it's almost like, is there really a difference if, like Bill Gates with the like COVID or whatever, like, is there really a difference if he's creating this huge, strategy to like fucking release some bioweapon to everyone to like kill a bunch of people to make money so that he can do X, Y, Z? At the end of the day, a bunch of people die and everything is like imploded. You know what I mean? It's like, does it necessarily even matter that there is some grand strategy?
Right. I mean, yeah, I think yeah, maybe so. And I think maybe I think there is a goal in the amongst the American pedophile class to pedophile rulers, where they do want us to all they don't like that there's any sort of stability with the average person. They want everybody to be essentially a slave to them with no power. They want complete dominance over us.
Yeah.
They don't like any sort of compromise at this point. They don't like to see, even just even just having people around who have, maybe a couple $1,000,000. I think it's like an affront to them. They want everybody completely desperate to do whatever they have, to do whatever they want for them at any time, and to just create, you know, recreate a modern day version of feudalism or slavery, because they're evil. Like that's the end of the day. They are pure evil. They are like literally just. I mean, I do really fundamentally believe this, that these
Yeah.
people are they are the physical embodiment of like all evil that has ever existed in the world and will ever exist. Like that, there's nothing left. They're not even really people. They're an embodiment of corruption and desires for just forces that are maybe even beyond this world. Um, so
In discourse. I think what they really want to is this, like you said, this techno feudal, but the technate is what they call it, right? Like to bring it back to the Epstein thing, Leslie Wexner, who is, billionaire philanthropist and billionaire businessman who somehow just ended up giving power of attorney over his whole estate to Jeffrey Epstein for, well, I don't know, he conned me, I don't know. He was recently deposed by like Congress. They like did a deposition for him, and
oh, is
I've
that the
never
one where
they went to I've never seen this. They
yeah.
didn't he was like, well, I'll do it, but can you come? I don't want to go over. And so they came to his house for Congress to depose him. Mind-boggling, number one. And he's laughing, and he's, I don't remember. I don't know. Well, but he does go on and on and on about this place in Ohio. In Ohio, it's a meme almost, right? That's so like Ohio, this mimetic thing. But there is something true to that mimetic, stupid thing. Like, oh, that's so Gen Z Ohio, where it's like the place is a freak zone. It's a zone of freakery because he goes on and on about this place, New Albany, this little town. And it's a town that is basically owned and incorporated by him as a private individual. So, and he goes on and on and on about it in the deposition about how he and Jeffrey Epstein is on the board of a lot of these, cutouts that are doing this. So very implicated in this. How they're pioneering a model, right, to bring back feudalism, right? Essentially, like you said, they're pioneering a model where since everything is so corrupt and can be bought and sold, what if we just buy large tracts of land, rezone them, literally make our own development corporations and get them like to be legal, and we now have private entities, foundations, corporations, individuals who privately own and operate a government. And it's on a small scale at New Albany, but they want to do that in Columbus, Ohio. And then they want to do it in Washington D.C. And then they want to do it in New York City, L.A., Seattle, Philadelphia. They eventually want that to be the model of governance. Basically, and we talked about this. I mean, I was just talking about this today with my coworker Amy, who's really nice, but she's just some silly little Jewish girl from New Jersey who wanted to farm, and I'm so jaded. I'm talking like, it's nice that you're on this farm and we get to live and eat food, but it's like there's a billionaire who owns this farm, and he's buying up farms all around it, and he owns the place that I live, and I work for him, and this place provides me food. Okay, so this is a private individual who essentially has a fiefdom of people who work for him and whose life, at least at this juncture, all depend on the whim of him saying, yeah, let's keep that going. Um, and on in the San Juans, how it's always like that, how there's just a small group of very wealthy individuals, and basically some of the only ways to make it out there, because it's so expensive, is to get some sort of job where you prostrate yourself to these very wealthy individuals so that you can find the nicer billionaire or 100 millionaire with the cushier job so that you can go, oh, it's kind of weird, I depend, but I got my guy, he's nice, he's actually good, like, well, and everyone's just, they're just, this is what we keep saying. I keep saying about Epstein is like, everyone, you watch these interviews with him that Steve Bannon did, and you start to realize this guy is not he's so punchable. His face is you wanna spit in his face as soon as you see him. There is no, oh, I got charmed by him, I got wooed by him. No, there's no charisma. It's zero. It's zilch. It's nothing. He's a satanic evil pedophile, and he's annoying. Okay, there's nothing that will make the average person encounter that person and go, dude, he's got some good ideas. You know what does? $100 billion. That's what does. That's what does. These people walk around and they go, that guy's got $100 billion, and he can get you a wife from Eastern Europe, and he could blah 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 blah, and your son and daughter can go to college, and blah blah blah, and people will be raped, but don't worry about that, blah 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 blah, and you get free, and it's small things. It's small things because these people we live on peanuts. So they go, it might just be he'll give you a Rolex, he'll just hand it to you like it's a whim, and people will sell out their whole lives for something like that, and that's how America is becoming right now, where people literally just go, all right, I either break my back doing labor that doesn't pay me anything, I have some office job for some huge international conglomerate corporation, or I live off the patronage of this billionaire that like hires like 50 people in my area to do XYZ thing. I don't know. Hopefully you're not the one washing his balls, you're the one like doing the gardening every now and again. It's just insane, and it's unfathomable to me that it continues to be like this, which is why I'm excited. I'm frankly I'm excited for this to collapse. I'm excited. I know it will be horrible and it would be chaotic and a lot of death and destruction, but I am excited because I want something new, and I'm an American. Every 2 4 years, I really want something new, and then we just get the same thing, just in a weirder package. Another one other point, then I'll bring it back to you. But Garland Nixon made a great point about like Trump. Trump was becoming the conservative Obama. He was the guy that was like, oh, I'm gonna end all the wars. We're gonna drain the swamp, right? You get rid of like corruption and stuff, and like and then he kind of got in and maybe did a little bit and then went no, did the exact opposite. Now I'm thinking, like you were saying, a lot of these comparisons, Trump is not the conservative Obama, he's the conservative Joe Biden. This is a doddering old man who's mentally not there, who's obviously either being controlled or it's like a presidency by committee at this point, and most of the committees in Israel. Um, and he's starting cataclysmic wars that will bombard the American economy to rubble, and they just keep going and just keep going and going and going like nothing crazy is happening, and keep doubling down. And I mean, I don't know what to make of it at this point, but it
I
doesn't seem
mean,
like he's turning the ship around at all.
I think yeah, that is. Well, he can't turn it around at this point. I mean, anything short of just complete surrender. But it's just yeah, I think there is a high you know America. I mean, let's be clear too. Like America used to be like this. Whatever we used to call it, we call it like whatever. People are freaking out about the techno feudalism that they're trying to impose. That's how America used to be, and it was for most of its existence. It was for this like very brief period because people organized during the Great Depression, because they fought back, and because they had ideals and ideology and strong, competent socialist leadership, socialist organizations, and strong, powerful trade unions, that we have a society where it's not completely like that yet. You do have some degree of freedom, and there are people who I can't, like, my mom owns this house, like there's a lot of people in America who's, at least they're not young people, but like at least their family, they own houses, they have some degree of safety net where they can go back and they can live with their parents in a house that they're not forced to be at like the brink of starvation. Not most people, but like there are still tens of millions of people with that privilege in America. But America, used to be this techno feudal society. It wasn't. I mean, it was an industrial feudal society. It was a society where 99% of people were essentially slaves. Even after slavery was abolished, they worked in factories and they were desperate and they were destitute. It was no different than modern day like Bangladesh or any of these other places that jobs are outsourced to, where people are so desperate for money that they'll work for absolutely nothing because they have nothing and they have no recourse and they have no way out. Um, so I mean, that is the world that is most ideal for the capitalist, for the business owner, and for the sociopath who is in those positions, who has risen to that position, who has been given that position, whatever. Um, and that's when the bosses are making the most money. Is at the end of the day, they realize that the bottom line is when a worker has some degree of power over their life and their some degree of autonomy and freedom where they can willingly quit their job or they can move somewhere else or stop doing whatever this person tells them to do, then they're at a disadvantage. Um, and they can't just churn out and pay people whatever they want and rake in massive, massive profits. Um, so, we and the ability to be able to replace people too, to have high unemployment, that's really beneficial to employers. Um, because you can always go out and say, "Oh, whatever, I'll hire somebody else for less." Um, so this idea that they would try and bring people back to this state, whatever we call it, like this new techno feudalism, but really it is just a return to that state is what they want to be in. This is how cities used to be run, and back in the day, it would whatever like some boss who owned a major industry that was an employer for the whole, millions of people in like Chicago or something like that, ran all of Chicago or ran all of New York or ran all of Pittsburgh or Cincinnati or wherever. And, you know, that's what they want to turn us back into. And I am sure that, it is possible that this might be part of a plan, this whole Iran war, to do a controlled demolition of the American economy to bring us back to that state to where they have even more power than they have now, as multi billionaires. It's not enough for them to have that. They need the whole population to be reduced to absolute slavery. And now they have, technology to help reinforce that. They have, essentially uh, light forms or maybe even competent forms of mind control through this technology and through these like algorithms, and artificial intelligence. Um,
And they're fine.
so
They're watching us everywhere at all times.
right, right. I mean, they do refeed us all these algorithms to keep us dumb, to keep us uninformed, to keep us guessing, to keep us pitted against each other and distracted from the fact that they are the villains and always sort of, fighting in our personal lives. When, we have way more in common with even somebody in your life that you just absolutely despise. You should be willing at any moment to make a tactical or strategic alliance with them to go after the real villains, the real forces of evil. Um, but we keep fighting against each other. We keep rejecting socialist ideas and socialist ideology, um, which is what we need to get through this again, because it is the only answer to capitalism. People don't understand this now. There is no, I hear this shit all the time, like, oh no, but like, I mean, I don't like capitalism. Like I'm anti-capitalist, but like socialism is it just doesn't play well with the average person. So if there's a way for us to just sort of like
That Mark,
re rebrand socialism and like turn it into something a little bit different, then maybe it could work. But otherwise, it just can't work here. It's like, well, if it can't work here, then you are condemning yourself and
that,
everybody else here to slavery. Like that's the only other option that we have. And it's not far from that anyways. The whole employee employer relationship in your life, like it's not far from that anyways. Maybe you could save up some money and put yourself in a position where you can kind of make bigger life choices, make bigger decisions, take your life in a different direction. But like the fact is, you have to be an employee somewhere if you want to survive. You have to go somewhere for like at least 40 hours, maybe less than 40 hours, but 40 hours a week for the rest of your life, barring, periods of unemployment. And you got to do what somebody else tells you to do, when they tell you to do it, or how they tell you to do it, whatever. You are essentially a slave if you work for a living and you're not a capitalist anyways. But like the harsher form of slavery is coming. The more uh, grinding and oppressive form of slavery is coming, and the only escape from it is if we organize with those ideals, with those old school socialist ideals of worker control and worker power and worker dictatorship over industry and economics and politics. Um, so I think, you know, what I'm hoping for is that America at some point will wake up. Americans will wake up, and they'll start to educate one another, and they'll start to work together more to strengthen unions. Um,
level, I think,
yeah,
I think, I just want to say I totally agree with this, and I'm just maybe gonna start winding down to the outro, maybe predictions, which I don't even have one off the top of my head. But one anecdote I'll say, and I was just thinking about this idea that yeah, like one of the it's good in theory, but in practice, nobody likes it. No, blah, blah, blah. This is such an issue because, and I mean, talking about like the techno feudalism, this guy Yanis Varoufakis really pioneered that, and I really have to give him a lot of credit. That's where I kind of started to dig into that. But I recently I was watching him, and he's kind of like he says he's a Marxist, but he's really his political project has been like DM25, which kind of like social democracy, kind of this like new left, synthetic left, kind of like wishy-washy, murky, kind of lib, but not lib, but communist socialist, but not really communist socialist, and it's just like, and he gave this interview and he was talking about Iran and how bad it is and like, but this is the problem with this, right? This is why people think they're all pussies, the people who say that people imagine what the left is and that they're just, they don't really have a stance on anything. They're kind of both siding everything. It's like, he was like, I have to say, like, the war in Iran is horrible, but and I don't support the regime in Iran and blah 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 blah, and how he's tired of like when the Iraq War happened, how he didn't support Saddam Hussein, but he didn't like the Iraq War. So it's like, dude, like the Iranian people, the culture, dare I say the government, dare I say the IRGC, their military, they are, at least in terms of the Gaza genocide, bar none, the most moral and principled people on the face of the earth, period, point blank. But on a physical realm, on a realm of physically what have they done to stop that genocide? Maybe you can make an argument the Yemenis, but there is no, oh, they're bad, their government's killing killing protesters. This is
Yeah,
this is such an,
the government to
yeah, like
the government.
this is such an issue to do this, you know, American imperialism bad, but the guys that they are fighting against are bad, but the imperialism is bad. And like this is the problem with left politics, is that they identify the issue, but oh, the billionaires, the for-profit healthcare is bad, but then they also say the solution is also bad, right? So
You know,
you're a Bernie bro if you actually want us to force a vote on this in Congress. You're not a real organizer, which basically means I am a liberal, but I sort of know that these things that we believe in or have to push are really not, people actually don't like them and they're really not good. So I'm going to triangulate and I'm going to say that all these things are not good, but at the same time I'm going to be making backdoor deals and I'm going to be sort of capitulating to these people so that I can get my what I think is some tiny little like reform that I'll never actually get anyway. And this has to stop. It has to stop. The civil rights movement, we went through this 60 years ago, and we have not learned anything. People still think, I'll go vote. I'll go protest. It's like, guys, we need to organize our workers. We need to have, like, armed militias that are with these organized workers, and they need to form their own parties. I don't know what. Call me crazy. Is somebody say Marxist Leninism? I don't know. Right? Like the two largest other superpowers had Marxist Leninist revolutions, and look how good they're doing. Maybe just maybe we shouldn't be these contrarians that say, oh, like the West is bad, but the East is also bad. So we're gonna do like our socialism, but it's gonna be like different. It's gonna be like better than them. It's like, well, none of that has ever materialized in America realistically in any sort of large scale fashion on the political scene. So we need to start getting we need to this whole Trotskyite, this whole neo social democracy thing, it needs to die, and the consciousness level needs to be raised, and it needs to be radicalized to the point where we're actually doing, and I don't even like the word socialism at this point anymore, because and Zizek used to say this, right? Like, for God's sakes, like, Alexandria AOC calls herself a socialist, right? So even the terms are getting muddled. You can't even say you're a socialist now. That just means you're a lib who's even crazier. This is a problem. We need to differentiate ourselves from these people because they're insane. They're out of line, and this needs to be a real political force. It's the largest vacuum right now in the American political landscape. The Libertarian Party, for Christ's sake, has more people. They're on more states' ballots, than like PSL is. So, and PSL has a lot of issues. So we're so behind, But I think once again, it's hard to say if this will actually be good. But I think a bit of what's called disaster communism. When a disaster happens and people, in order to survive, naturally have to come together to be like, okay, there's a hurricane. Can I get on top of your roof of your house? I think it's sad to say, I think it's gotten to that point in America where literally a disaster. Like you said, right? Your power went out in the whole on the whole island, right? And that was like, oh shit, I should go outside. I should read. I should maybe like, I'll go for a walk. You meet someone, you see somebody, that you wouldn't have done that if you had this constant internet stream pounding your face, and engaging you to not go outside and just talk to people. You know,
Yeah,
once you're physically you're thrown kind of even like COVID did this to an extent. You're thrown out of your job and your lifestyle in the regular industrial world, and you have to go outside and contend with other people and go, this is fucked. You got to do something about it. I think it's unfortunate, Marx always thought like the revolution would happen in industrialized, more developed nation like Germany, America in theory should have been a place where we had all these freedoms, during like post World War II era, and we had all this ability to organize and all these like tools to do it with, but it never materialized. And I think it was because at the end of the day, there was a base level of comfort. And imperialism provided that comfort in a way. And so people rather either consciously or unconsciously didn't know that, but that comfort needs to go away in order for people to wake up and say, okay, not only is this morally bad, it's not working for us on a physical realm, on a realm of physics, of reality. Things aren't coming in like they used to. The inputs, these commodities, they're not coming in, they're not cheap. So what are we doing? And I hope and pray, yeah, that will happen, and that there isn't some billionaire scheme that this is like some destruction that they'll somehow end up on top of. I that makes I'm paranoid about that, but I do think, like you said before, like this is such a crazy inflection point, like, and for all the people who believe in like the planet racism, like astrology, like tomorrow the moon is in Aries and like all these planets are in Aries, you know, the stars are literally aligning, and Trump and Bibi Netanyahu imploded a ceasefire. Within a few weeks, this thing will probably be reared up again. China may be pulled in. Who knows what's going to happen? Oil prices are going to start going up exponentially once again, and I don't know. E- Everything under heaven is in chaos. The situation is absolutely fine. Mao Zedong. So we're living in very interesting times,
yeah,
and as doomer and paranoid as I can be, I think a lot of people can be. Um, we have large opportunities on our hands, folks. Life changing opportunities that people do not see for millennia. So let's not waste that too. I think we need to be less doomer and more bloomer about the possibilities there, because people lived under feudalism for hundreds of years with nothing happening. Agrarian lifestyle, just paying tithes, just toil, you know? Nothing happening, not even some weird uprising, until, 14, 15, 1600s, right? So could have been what happened in the industrial period. It could have gone on for hundreds of years. But it didn't. Technology has accelerated it to this weird pace where now it's diffused and people are using it against itself. So the tools of imperialism are now turned against itself. The advanced weaponry of imperialism is now, being usurped by other countries, other nations, other peoples who don't have that ideology and that culture. And that means our culture and ideology will die. And good, it's sick. It's sick and it needs to die. And when something dies, I live on a farm. When we slaughter a batch of broilers, we get a new one. That old batch might have been fucking annoying. They might have been pecking at each other. They might have been fucked up from the get go. Sometimes you're happy. It's sad. They were chick 10 weeks ago and you see them, you grow up, and then you kill them. But you get a new batch of Oilers, So, and that's a whole new, it's a whole new situation, Who knows? It could be amazingly better. So, I think we all have to keep that in mind right now because on the one hand, this is the dialectical nature of it, right? The Hegelian dialectical nature. On the one hand, global collapse, World War III, balkanization of global trade, even to the point of maybe gas, oil, energy depletion, famine, which is horrible. On the other hand, the destruction of American empire, the destruction of imperialism maybe as a whole, the building up of a multipolar system, the imploding of these genocidal, freakish, messianic uh, unions and alliances, NATO, GCC, EU, um, the Quad, all these large military and economic alliances built on scam, scheme, and plunder. They're dying, they're imploding, and they will not be able to work like they did in the past. They're going to have to pay their fair share. There's not going to be any more scheming or scamming, and that's good. That's good. That's good. That has to happen for the justice of humanity, between nations, right? I think sovereignty of certain nations, that will be much more asserted than it was before. It in the past, even a country like Iran, most Americans would think, "Who cares? Who gives a fuck?" Like, we could probably invade it, take it down if we wanted to. Who cares? Um, I don't think that's going to happen after this. I think everyone on large swaths of the political spectrums, left, right, center, up, down, left, right, black, white, whatever, is going to be very wary, and they already are, but they're going to be very wary about doing anything anywhere to anyone because Iran isn't China, it's not Russia, it's not a superpower. It's de facto becoming one because it's defeating America. And if Iran can do it, I think that should make other people think twice. Who else could do it, right? So that's good. That's good. At the end of the day, that's good. The bully is being knocked down a peg. He's still going to be a very large, imposing figure, but he's not going to hold this, like when someone walks into a room, and they have that sort of like aura to them, like that. We're not going to have that anymore. Like Venezuela, like they didn't even put up a fight because part of this is the narrative of how we operate, that we are this untouchable, you can't do anything, you'll never be able to fight it back against us, you might as well capitulate now before we even try anything. That's what happened to Venezuela. And I think I was at least very confused by that because Venezuela, a very capable country, sort of similar to Iran in certain ways, large country, oil producing, has a large, radical revolutionary history. Very insane terrain, would be very hard to do a ground invasion of that place. Would probably be very hard to do a blockade of that place. Um, and basically, Delcy Rodriguez sold them out. Sold Maduro down the river without even putting up a fight. Why? Why? Why not? I get it. You pay a price. You're going to be at war with the United States of America. That's a large price to pay. But the thing is, with an attrition war like this, if you have people, if you have an industrial base, if you have a certain geography, you can now defeat the United States of America in a short term, not even a protracted conflict. Now, a short term conflict. What did we say at the beginning? It's been 7 weeks. Iranian oil sanctions are lifted. We can't get anything in or out of the Strait of Hormuz. All 13 bases in the Middle East are rendered inoperable. Nobody's there. Um, Hypersonic missiles striking Israel every day. Our carrier groups are getting struck. I mean, it's a complete disaster. It's a complete disaster. The petro yuan is now the new de facto reserve currency. That happened in 7 weeks. 7 weeks, folks. Took Afghanistan, what, 13 years to defeat us? It took Iran 7 weeks.
Took Afghanistan like 20 years. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's a game changer. I mean,
Yeah. I mean, we are, there's there's an Indian, sect it's a Hindu sect, um, called the Shivism, for the god of Shiva. And there are all these Shivitic gods that follow the path of creative destruction, which they're all very violent and kind of wicked and chaotic, and they do these horrible things, but then they cleanse the world and then they recreate something else, something that's beautiful. Um, so these. I think that's sort of a phase that happens. I mean, it is a cycle in human history that happens again and again, where there are these periods of violence and danger and destruction and horror, and out of those periods there come moments and periods where things are beautiful and they're good, and people appreciate each other and treat each other well, and life is good. And after we pass through this time, um, which is it's a time, it is a wicked time, and it is a wicked time full of wicked people who do wicked and terrible things, and it is a system in America and in the West that even places like China try to emulate, which are it's built on corruption and greed and destructive, heinous behavior. It is a place where people who lie thrive. People who commit things that you would see in the Bible every day. It's like Sodom and Gomorrah. It is a place of darkness and evil, and we really are at a point where it's a breaking point where that can't happen anymore, and it won't happen anymore, and we're going to transition into a world where the pace of the world, the new world that we're going into, is going to be set by um, by a communist civilization, a civilization run by a communist party. China is a socialist country. It will be a communist country at some point, and the future of the world is going to be led by the civilization, one of the earliest civilizations in the world, and it's going to usher in the new age. No matter what happens in the short term, once this chaos will settle down, but communism is the future. And what communism means is a society that is essentially the opposite of our society. It's a society where people share things, where people work together, where people don't need to have massive amounts of industry and destruction, and they make what they need, and they need what they make, and they do things to better the world, and they're not enslaved to one another, and there isn't a government that hovers over them and tells them what to do all the time, and they're not tied to money in every instance in their life. People don't understand what communism is, and that is the end goal. It is a utopian concept, and it will be a reality for the world, because that's how people essentially lived before we started all this civilizational struggle. Um, And it's our nature to be like that. It is our nature to be like that. It's not our nature to be violent and terrible towards each other. It is a survival instinct that happens when we are put into positions of danger and extreme stress for prolonged periods of time. But human nature is something that is a good thing, and that is the world that will be created once all of this ends. Once all of this chaos comes to an end, I mean, it's not going to be probably for another, maybe for hundreds of years, but um, the process of transitioning to that is happening now, and once America, which is the center of capitalism, of old school capitalism and imperialism, it is the last of the great and terrible uh, capitalist empires, European capitalist empires that ravaged and destroyed the world and looted and enslaved the world for hundreds of years. It's the last one standing, and it is falling right now, and it will fall. And um, we just need to be able to pick up the pieces, when it ends, when it all comes down, and be be bold enough to say to each other that we can do better than this. There's so much cynicism in America. There's so much jadedness in America that there's like, this is the way it is and it can't be better. But it can be so much better. Even just little change. In like Europe, people go to Europe and they're like, I can't believe they have healthcare. I can't believe that they have like some sort of social safety net. I can't believe that they have public transportation. Even just little things like that are overwhelmingly different lifestyle for most Americans that just haven't seen that things can be better. And we just need to be bold enough to imagine that we can change the world and we can make it better, and that we will make it better. It doesn't matter what happens to you or I or in our lifetimes. Human beings are going to be living in a better future down the road, and we've paid such a heavy price to get here, to deal with this evil force that is trying to enslave us and hold on like a corpse with rigor mortis to that just it can't let go of its own muscles and joints, and it's just frozen in this position. But it won't last. It can't last. These things and these ideas that people think are permanent, they're not. They're not permanent. They're not a fact of reality. It's going to end, and it is ending now. And you know, we have to just be willing to have some discipline to see this through, um, and to really honestly not look at just these narrow visions of what the world could be like, or what the world is like, and just say that it's just set in stone and we have to just keep following this path. We have to be able to say, we can do better. We can come up with a future that's better, because we can, because it's easy to, because this world is not, people are not supposed to be living like this. And even the most utopian fantasy for America, for modern day capitalism, of like, you live the best life and you become some rich person that gets to go to Vegas and do whatever they want. You know, living a life based on desire, where you think you've achieved like everything you want from desire, it doesn't have the outcome that you think it does. That is not that is not an optimal outcome for a human being. Human beings are supposed to be surrounded by beauty and love, but like desire is not something that should be the compelling force in human existence. It's something that actually, we know that it causes most people more harm than good. Even when you get something you thought you wanted more than anything else in the world, guess what? It's not what you actually. It's not going to make you feel whole. Um,
Greed, right? Which rule our whole culture. You know, they are seven deadly sins. I've been on that the seven deadly things sins: gluttony, lust, greed, right? Like these are things literally people for thousands of years have been like, these are the worst things you can do, and you need to repent and you need to like excise them from you, and be on guard for them. Our whole culture is built on exalting those things. So what do you think's gonna
right.
happen? Right, like you said,
Right.
it's biblical. It's Sodom and Gomorrah at this point. My earbuds are starting to die. So I'm just gonna get into predictions. Also amazing everything you just said. Totally agree. Um, and sorry, I'm gonna put you on the spot because I was just kind of thinking of some of these while you were talking. But my predictions are, I almost don't even want to. I want to almost go back to my rule of making no predictions because it's like a blockade of a blockade. Who even comes up with that shit? So I don't know. But I do predict China. What I think will happen is that recently Russia, their oil tanker fleet was getting like boarded by all these Europeans, and so when one of their oil tankers went to the UK into the channel, they had a naval destroyer with it. So what I think is going to happen with this blockade is that there will be some sort of naval battle or naval standoff. I hope not, to be honest, but this is just where I see it going. If it's really happening like this between China and America, because I think what China's gonna do is they're gonna just start sending their many vessels, of which they produce many more than we do, um, with their oil tankers, which go freely in and out of the Strait of Hormuz because they have, I don't know, normal bilateral relations with Iran and pay them money for oil, which is how things usually work. Pay someone money for a thing. Crazy. Um, and I think they're going to start protecting it. And I think America is going, they're going to be in a very hairy situation where um, they're waiting for China to blink and they don't blink. So that could be crazy. That could be crazy, but I think something like that will happen. Um, what else? I also think that soon enough, once the ceasefire really begins to collapse, because the negotiations have collapsed, but the ceasefire is still kind of, you know, at least from America to Iran and Iran to American targets specifically, as is still kind of the ceasefire is still kind of in effect. Um, Once that's revs back up, which I think it will, um, I think Yemen, our brothers at Ansar Allah, I think they're going to close the Bab el Mendez Strait in order to really go double nuclear. The Strait of Hormuz was Iran's nuclear option, and they're like, okay, well, these people are crazy. They're not even registering that this is the nuclear option. And I think Yemen's going to go, fuck it, we'll do the Bab el Mendez Strait too. Fuck it, double down. Two on
Yeah.
them. And I think that it's just going to be a slam dunk for the resistance. I think Hezbollah is just going to keep taking out Israelis, and it's just going to be within 3 weeks. It'll be really, really, really bad economically and militarily for the West in that region. I just think it will be almost like impassable. Those are my predictions.
Yeah. That's probably fair. I mean, maybe we'll see about the Chinese thing, but
It's a little crazy,
that,
That's
at
the
some
wild
point,
card.
at some point, though, that's going to be true. I mean, at some point, there will be a naval battle between the U.S. and China. Um, you know, maybe not in this conflict, but in the next 10 years, I think that's a guarantee. Um, uh, yeah, as far as predictions, I mean, if you're trying to bet money on anything, I would say, oil prices right now have just gone down a whole bunch, right? Actually, so if you want to make a quick buck, go on Robinhood and buy an oil contract if you got the futures contract, because it's just, I don't know, it was down. It was under like, I think it was down to like 80 for a little bit, um, because of the markets for some reason are reacting to this like it's a peace deal. Like, oh, they had a ceasefire. They've reached a peace deal.
Yeah.
Um, markets are pretty. I don't know what the fuck these idiots are thinking, but like, if you want to make some money right now,
Yeah.
buy some more futures.
It's wishful thinking on these people. You know what? Just one super quick thing. I know we're super over time, but I work. What do I work like Sunday through Thursday? So the week is like off a bit. And so when I get to like Tuesday, I'm like, oh, it's like Wednesday already, and I act as if it's already I only have like one more day left of work, even though the next day I wake up and I go, oh, I have 2 more days left of work. I forget that for a second, and it happens again, and I go, oh, it's Thursday now, and it's going to be the end of my week today, and it's like, no, it's like Wednesday. That's what the markets are like now. They're like, oh, the ceasefire is happening, right? And then there's like a bit of news, and they're like, oh no, it's not happening. But then they go, oh wait, but this other thing's happening. Okay, cool. So it's cool, right? Until a week or so, and they realize again, and they go, oh, it's not right.
Yeah, they're just trying. They're not really recognizing the situation that things are in right now. So I mean, shit, I mean, I might do that tomorrow morning if oil futures are still low. I'm probably gonna spend a couple $100, something, make a quick 20% profit in a day or two. Um, so my prediction, yeah, I mean, the whole premise of this is that there's not going to be a peace deal, but like, yeah, there's still a ceasefire. So when the ceasefire ends, hostilities are going to resume. That's just going to be. I'll stick with that.
That's the same.
And they'll stay resumed for a long time. There might be another ceasefire, but it's going to fall through too after the peace agreement falls through. So, yeah, I'll stick with that. Yeah, like and subscribe. If you've watched this whole thing, yeah, you should like and subscribe because you know help a boy out. Help a couple of boys out.
But smash that subscribe, smash the follow, like, comment, subscribe, run it up. We work full time.
A comment. That's what I was saying.
Leave a comment.
Do me a favor. Just write a comment in there.
Engage with us.
Yeah, hit me up. Hit me up.
We'll respond. Yeah, we'll do some analysis. All those predictions.
Respond to every single comment in the comment section.
We do. Unless you're a bot and you're some guy in India, of which I've already got one, so I hate you. But
there's a guy in India.
Yeah, it's just some bot that like commented on the last video. But
when I like the video about the cast.
No, it's always like, I liked your video, but your channel seems lacking. Why don't you click on this link to get the real viewers you could get on Rumble? They always have that one. But yeah, that's all. That's a lock. Take that to Polymarket. That's all. At least all the shit that this guy, he took the low hanging fruit. I kind of went for the crazier ones, But I want to get the crazier ones that when like a crazy one happens, I'm like, okay, and now that come on, we said that on the show, bro. But yeah, I think that's episode. What is this? 7 or 8 or something? 7. Thanks for tuning in. This was a long one, but a great discussion. I'm about to go the fuck to sleep because this was actually Thursday for me. I worked all fucking week farming. and trying to socialize and trying to meal prep and clean this insane house. So, um, yeah, peace out, everybody.